and education, reduce inequality and super economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans, water bodies, plus forests. Today, we are having a discussion on the Sustainable Development Goal number 6, which is the UN's target to make safe water and sanitation accessible for everyone for good by 2030. Uganda has made this commitment through various instruments and national planning agendas, but the question stands, what will it take for Uganda to achieve SDG 6 by 2030? In studio, I have Dr. Patrick Moriarty, Chief Executive Officer, IRC International Water and Sanitation Center, and a Washington's nod, Ms. Jane Nawunya Mulumba, Country Director, IRC Uganda, WASH Leadership Mentor. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I will start with the nod. Dr. Patrick Moriarty, we were talking about your name. For the fans of Sherlock Holmes, they must be ecstatic. They're wondering, is it the real Moriarty that I'm having?
Real Moriarty.
Yes, take note of that. Doctor, for the viewers who are not so familiar with IRC, just give us a little bit of background of the organization and what your mission is.
Sure. So IRC we're an international non-governmental organization. We're a bit more than 50 years old, originally from the Netherlands.
Yeah.
But increasingly now we're here in Ghana, where in Uganda, and with several offices across the continent, decentralizing. And we were set up back in 1968 with the aim of supporting the drive towards everybody having access to safe water and sanitation. And I think in a way, it's sad that we still have that mission here in 2022.
Yeah.
So we still haven't achieved it, but we're very determined.
8 years to go.
8 years to go, exactly. So we're feeling the pressure.
Yeah. And I'll come to you, Ms. Jen. What is the status of WASH in Uganda? Have we achieved anything?
We have not.
Yeah.
We have not achieved anything, and many of us are worried about that. The pace of achieving everything, because we are not looking at just small percentages, we are looking at 100%. You've made it clear it's 8 years to go.
Yes.
When we signed up to this in 2015, 2030 was very far. It was very far.
8 years to
now
go.
It's 8 years. But then we also have a target in there that we should have accomplished in 2020. We are in 2022, and we have not. And that's the target on ecosystems. We are still destroying the wetlands. Our lakes are polluted, but we were supposed to achieve that target in 2020. So we are not there yet, but we are moving. But the progress is slow. It's very slow. And COVID-19 is not helping things. So the last 2 years, we lost the momentum, though it was also an opportunity to raise the bar and the profile of especially sanitation and hygiene, hand washing. We are all forced to wash our hands, we are forced to sanitize. But that was like a wake-up call that shook us into some more motion, but we know that the 2 years we lost. So we need to speed up, really fast track.
Yeah.
I think the WHO and UNICEF are even talking about 5 times, 6 times, 15 times. What does that mean?
Yeah.
It means putting in more money. It means making use of the legislation and policies that we have, really operationalizing them. But you can only do that when you put in money. The population has grown.
Yeah, very true.
We had one city.
Now we have more than 3.
We have many urban, we have municipalities, we have town councils. We are producing. We are producing a lot. So there are many more people. And the demands are higher. The supply is really not there. It's still very low. But the efforts are there. The interventions are huge from government, from private sector, from civil society. from media. That's why we're here. So the interventions are there, but the recognition that we are not there is hitting us badly, and the pressure is high. 8 years?
It's quite a short time, and nowadays time seems to fly by without you noticing.
Yep.
Doctor, Jane has talked about the state of WASH in Uganda. What is the global state?
I think the global state is quite similar. We've had some countries are off track.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's just the reality. But other countries are showing what can be done.
Yep.
And I think, you know, we've seen, for example, India. You know, in 2014, I think Narendra Modi made I think it was their National Independence Day speech, and in that he said, by 2018, we're going to eliminate open defecation in the whole country. I mean, that's India. That's 1 billion people.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody thought it was undoable, and yet, to a large extent, it's been done. And then in 2019, and he called that a national mission. He said, this is our national Clean India mission. I, as president, so, you know, a president, he stood up there in front of everyone and he began talking about toilets. And he owned that. And he said, for us to be the country we want to be, we can't have people defecating in the open. That's not what we're looking for.
Yeah. Actually, something that India got to kind of be known for. You step into India, you smell feces.
That's the point. Yeah. And then in 2019, they said, okay, now we're going to do the same for water. Yep. A tap in every house by 2024. But I think that's, you know, our organization, that's one of the things we say, that's the first thing that has to happen. Political leadership. Yep. You know, we're looking to the presidents. We're looking to the parliamentarians. We work with parliamentarians. We do everything we can to work with the offices of presidents, because we need that leadership. And the thing we would most like to see in all the countries we work in is that something like that, a presidential compact, where the president says, this is what I want. Because a modern Uganda, a modern Ghana, a modern Burkina Faso, everywhere we work, it can't be modern if we're defecating in the open, if we're queuing around hand pumps that aren't working. You know, that's...
It's quite difficult, and I'll come back to you, Jane. He has mentioned about open defecation, lack of safe water. For a layman, they would think, Uganda has more than 3 water bodies. We have one of the longest rivers in the world. Why aren't we having access to safe water? What is really happening?
We are having access to safe water.
But
the catch part there is that we are not all having access to safe water. And that's where the problem is. When a few people are having access to safe water, and there are the vulnerables out there that are not being served, that feel that they're not being recognized as part of the whole.
They're excluded.
They're excluded.
Keyword being safe water for all.
For all.
Yeah.
It has to be for all. If it is for few, then it doesn't make sense.
And that brings me to the question, which parts in Uganda are having this problem?
Oh, we still have parts like Karamoja. We still have the drier parts of northern Uganda.
Yeah.
But interestingly, even other parts that should ideally have and are well endowed are still not accessing it.
Yeah.
And safe water is big. It's not just, you know, the clean water that you see in a glass. The experts will do water quality testing, and they'll tell you this water is full of feces. So it's not fit for human consumption. So it's not safe. So the
it's
words
not
that
safe for me just going to a river, getting my cup.
No, it doesn't work like that.
I be drinking feces every day?
Oh yes, we drink them. We drink them.
Please
so
go
the
on.
words that are in there are the ones that we should pay attention to. We can easily say access to water, but we put the word safe there.
Safe water.
Because there are parameters.
Yeah.
that have to be checked. Certain components have to be in place for it to qualify to be safe. Because if it's not safe, then it affects SDG 3 on health.
Yeah.
It affects SDG 4 on education. Kids will not go to school because they are sick. They have diarrhea. There is cholera. So it's so interconnected, and the words in there for us as IRC, but also as organizations that are involved in this campaign, we take them seriously. National Water here will tell you it's expensive to treat water. It is expensive.
How expensive is it?
Chemicals. If you go to Gaba now, they've even extended the pipes more inside the lake because the near part of the lake is very contaminated. They spend a lot of money. But all these institutions that are involved in water spend a lot of money. Water quality alone. We call it a service. It has to be a service.
Safe
you don't
water.
just open...
Provision of safe
water.
water.
For us, we believe you don't just open the tap and water is flowing and you say, I have water. No. If you open the tap in the morning at 10, you need to open the same tap tomorrow at 10, the other day, the whole year, and water is flowing. It's reliable. It's been treated, so it's safe. Okay. It is affordable. There are costs involved. Can we pay? It is affordable. Are we thinking about those that cannot pay? Ministry of Water and Environment, National Water, they have proper policies and strategies that reach out to those that may not afford. When you go to Chisenyi, when you go to our informal settlements here, there are subsidies. I think it's 25 shillings a litre, or even if it's 100, I mean a jelly can of 20 litres. So they subsidize to help them, but they're not telling them you shouldn't pay. So is it affordable to them? Is it the right quantity? Like I can access 20 litres every day, or I can access, the quantity that I need. So there are those parameters. And that's why it becomes a little bit complicated. You don't just wake up and say, we have, or everybody has. No. You look at those little components in there, and that's why in the beginning I said, the pace is slow, but we are moving. Because those components are being addressed by different parties. Different parties. Right now, our main concern, if you look at policy and legislation, we have been reviewing the National Water Act and the National Water Policy forever. We need to complete it. Because if you don't have policies and legislation that guide you, and you are using obsolete ones, what we are using, they are old. We need new ones that are fit within the times. So that government has to do that very fast. We are part of the process. We are working with the Ministry of Water and Environment to do that, but the pace is snail.
They have to be involved.
Yes, they are. They are involved, and we are involved. They involve us. They give us the space to be part of that discussion and discourse. But you need the policy and legislation. You need financing. You need money. Of course, if you look at the amount, even right now, in nominal terms, the money is high. We are in trillion. And you know when you qualify to be in trillion in this country, then you clap. But what exactly does that mean? It means more cities, population has gone up, climate change is affecting us. So you need to consider all that. Is that money still enough with all these calamities that are befalling us? Look at how the floods. Up to now, some of the parts near Lake Victoria are still submerged. So it's all those things put together. It's not one small piece. And that's why when you're introducing Patrick, you referred to him as a systems nerd. We believe in a system, everything. Not one piece in isolation of the other. Regulation, policy, legislation, integrated water resources management, planning, inclusive planning, not just planning. Monitoring. Is our data right? Are we actually monitoring? And when we monitor and do the analysis, where does that go? Is it feeding into decision-making processes? Is it helping us to plan better? Now we are in the framework of the National Development Plan 3. How are we managing in there? You know, we look at all that. And that's why the conclusion is we are moving, but moving slowly. We need to speed up. We need to put in more money.
We need to push.
We need our head of state to come in. We need our prime minister to come in.
Yeah.
The WASH Parliamentarians Forum for WASH is there. It's strong. And it's helping with the advocacy at that level. But we need much more. 15 times. That's what we are saying. 15 times.
Doctor, and I'll come to you on this. Jen mentions the fact that there is need for all these other partners and parties to come in and push because the need is vital. Apart from the president and the government, what other key policymakers and probably partners should IRC get on with and say, let's push this agenda forward? Or maybe partners that you are already working with?
Sure, I think that's a great question, and you know we always say it calls for collective action to achieve this, and you've mentioned some of the people. I think one of the things we've really been saying in the last few years is, yes, there's lots of people involved, but maybe at the moment there's sometimes too many. You know? What we see is, and it's a sign of where water and sanitation are in many developing countries, that you have, sure, in the cities you have the national waters or the utilities. We all know that, and if we live in cities and we pay our bills, but then out in the rural areas, you've got NGOs, you've got small groups, you've got projects, and there's this assumption that somehow, you know, someone comes and they make a well or they provide a borehole and then they leave, and then the community's left to get on with that all by themselves. So I think a big part of our agenda, and one of the most important groups we work with is utilities. Is, you know, I think it was very exciting. We met the MD of National Water and his team the day before yesterday, and we're talking about expanding those services into the rural areas. You know, it's 2022. We shouldn't be, expecting a village or a small rural town to set up a committee to manage its own water. People have their own business to get on with. They need to get on with life. They just want to pay for a professional service, like Jane was saying. So I think that whole professionalization agenda for us is really important, and that's one of the things that we as an organization strive to support, whether that's in Uganda, these new umbrellas that have been set up for rural water provision, whether it's working with entrepreneurs to provide sanitation services. I think these are the people, businesses, state or private, regulators, parliamentarians, government. But again, I'll go back to that first point. I think without that guiding vision, it's very hard for everybody else to fall in behind. And that's what Jane was saying about the policy and the legislation. I think often people, they go, that's very up here, what's that to do with me? I just need to have that service provided, right? But at any one time, about a third of the existing infrastructure in the whole of Africa isn't functioning because of that, because we forget about that. We come, we build, and then we move on, and then 3 years later, 5 years later, the thing breaks down. No one's paying for it. No one's monitoring it. If they are monitoring it, no one's acting on that data. Why? Because it's not a professional service. You know, we don't have an agenda for privatization. That's a decision that a country makes, people make. It doesn't matter whether it's private or it's public, it needs to be professional. I think that's the key to unlocking it. And the more we can, and when we get excited, it's where we see that professionalization beginning to happen in the countries we work in, and that's what we try to support.
And you know, when you were talking about access to water, we are in 2020. I've been in Karamoja one of those days, and I've seen small kids standing by the road waiting for any car to pass by, and they're asking for small bottles, like Renzori bottles, soda bottles. And one time I asked, why are these kids asking for these bottles? And I was told they use those bottles to keep water at home. It's quite sad, literally sad. And Doctor, I'll still come to you. Ms. Jane mentioned something that caught my attention, regulating water contamination. You talked about how National Water is extending the pipes deeper into the lakes because all the water nearby is contaminated. We are going to start drilling oil, and internationally, oil has been a contaminator of either climate or even water. What are some of the regulations or strategies that are put in place, or probably IRC is advocating for, to make sure that we limit contamination that is already happening and probably is going to happen in the future? We have 8 years.
We have 8
No
years.
pressure.
You know, I'm not a huge expert on the particular issues around oil extraction or mining, but it's clearly, you know, whether it's mining, whether it's oil, we see that they are major polluters. I think the surprising thing is that you'll often see the regulations there. So it's not a problem that the regulation's not there.
Yeah.
It's a problem that it's not enforced. You know, that people, that whether that's through lack of means, you know, the people who are supposed to be monitoring, who are supposed to be going into the field and ensuring that leaks aren't happening, or that that the waste from mines is being properly contained, they're not doing it. Corruption can come into it, you know. So I think, again, you know, you introduced me at the start as a systems nerd, and I think that's one of the things that IRC positions itself on. We say it's never just the one thing. It's never, oh, we're drilling oil, we must have regulation. I'm sure the regulation's there. I'm sure that the policies are there. But are the people there to enforce it? Is there the transparency that's needed so that if there are problems, people become aware of them? Because that temptation, oh, there's a problem, let's hide it, until it becomes impossible to ignore. And it's not just here. I mean, I don't know if people in Uganda are aware of all the challenges they had in Flint, in Michigan, in the US, where they had massive contamination of the water supply, where the government, the local government tried to ignore that, tried to suppress it for as long as they could. So I think transparency, regulation, policy, and then having the means to enforce that in a transparent way, which also involves civil society often, and the media. You know, that we all have the space to talk and address these issues.
And move the agenda forward. Now, I'll come to you, Ms. Jane. Under your report, it is said that over 10 million Ugandans still live without safe water. 65% are not practicing improved hygiene behavior, and 8% of the total population practice open defecation. Now, WASH is not only limited to safe water, but also sanitation and hygiene. What is the status in the two, sanitation and hygiene, in Uganda? Do we have enough toilets? Are we still...
There's quite a lot of focus and interest in the water part, which is understandable. The taps can be seen, the pipes can be seen, the reservoir tanks can be seen. It's huge investment. Sanitation and hygiene tend to still like take the back seats. They are considered private. I go to the toilet, I poo, I finish.
Alone.
I get out, I'm alone. Why are you bringing my private things into the public? But if you don't manage that whole pooing and, you know, then that's where the problem comes in.
Sorry to cut you short. There's an interesting article I saw on your website. Let's put the poo back where it's supposed to be.
Yes, we put the poo back where it is supposed to be. And where is that? It starts with management of that poo. You know? Move it from the private sphere to the public sphere. Then think about it in terms of health, in terms of productivity. If people are sick and they are busy throwing up and diarrheaing, they have cholera, they cannot work, they are not productive. So it moves automatically from the private to the public, because then it affects many other things. But because of that thinking, even with all the awareness that has been created around it, in Uganda alone, Ministry of Water and Environment There's a whole national hand washing initiative. There are sanitation units for both urban and rural. Even in the umbrellas, in national water, sewerage. So efforts are there, interventions are being done. But to take it back to what Patrick raised, it has to come from a little bit high above. One of the years, some time back, we had His Excellency the President grace the function of the National Hand Washing Day in Kamuli. And I remember he said, this looks very simple, but it is not simple. I grew up, my mother used to tell me it is important. But then my mother was also a church person and understood these things. Because church religions have done quite a lot to promote that. So, and he even laughed and said, why are we making a lot of noise about this? It should be automatic.
But it isn't.
But it is not automatic. You know, it is not automatic. Look at COVID. You go to a supermarket, you are supposed to wash your hands. People still complain.
Why am I sanitizing?
Why am I sanitizing? This soap they put in this water is not good. Me, I react to soap. We have all sorts of excuses. It's behavior change. Sanitation and hygiene, behavior change.
Creating awareness.
Creating awareness. Why is it so difficult for somebody to go to the latrine, to go to the toilet, do his or her business, get out and just... Why is it so difficult to wash hands?
It shouldn't be.
It should not be, but it is.
And because we are running out of time, I'll come to you, Doctor. In 2020, you wrote in a blog that water and sanitation aren't rocket science, and it's true. They are simpler than vaccine development, yet they aren't sexy enough to attract the funding resources needed. And she mentioned about the lack of funding, financial funding that WASH systems get. How can we convince the policymakers, the governments, to put in more money? Because this is quite important.
That's a great question. That's what we're looking to you for. That's what we look to the media for. You know, how can we convince? I think we can convince governments by convincing people, by helping people to raise their voice. Water and sanitation are fundamental human rights. They've been acknowledged as human rights since, I think, 2010. You know, it is, you cannot have a modern, dignified life without clean water and sanitation. It shouldn't be sexy. You know, we should be excited about rockets and rocket science, but we should be doing that knowing that these fundamental human rights are there. And I think people need to be aware of those rights, and they need to raise up their voice, and they need to hold their leaders and politicians and service providers accountable for delivering those rights. Not for free. Everyone has to pay. They're businesses, they have to work as businesses. But people have to be aware of that right, and they have to think, no, I'm not going to walk 5 kilometers anymore to fetch water. You know? You
should provide me with these services.
Why isn't the service here? Why isn't it working?
And I know that we are running out of time. My producer's telling me we have to get away, but Jane, I'll come to you. How can Uganda actually meet the 2030 deadline? What do we need to do in about 30 seconds?
People need to get tired of the situation. When we get tired of the situation, when we get tired of defecating in the bush, when we get tired of drinking water that is not of good quality, and we raise up and raise our voices, we complain. We have representatives, we elected people, we complain. Because I remember when I was still in Makerere, Reverend Dr. Kanyike said, the worst sin is the sin of silence.
True.
We keep quiet too much. We in Uganda will say, kana gwera mweyo, that it will sort itself out.
We shall see what happens.
No. Water, sanitation and hygiene will not sort itself out.
Well,
we will die.
Well, thank you so much for coming through. I know this is a very important conversation, but we have run out of time. Thank you, Doctor, for coming through. Thank you, Ms. Jane, for coming through.
Thank you.
Well, be part of the conversation. Look out for our social media platforms, that is on Facebook, Twitter. Look out for NTV Uganda or myself, Idris Matusegawa, and tell me, what do you think about WASH? Are you keeping sanitized? Are you not defecating openly? Share your views. We shall be right back just right after this.